It is 6:02 and we just got quorum, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 12th meeting of the Vermont Yankee Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel. This is our last meeting of 2022, last scheduled meeting of 2022. My name is Emily Davis. I am this year's 2022 panel chair, and opening remarks, review the meeting. Kind of have a good little bit kind of to do this evening. Typical fashion, we're going to review and hopefully approve of the annual report before the new year. We also have our elections for the chair and vice chair for 2023. There's a little bit of business to get through this evening in addition to kind of our regular programming. So without further ado, I'll just do a panel roll call and a confirmation of our quorum. So I'll say your name. If you could please introduce yourself as we go down. We'll start at the top of my list, which is Commissioner Tierney.
Sorry, got to come off mute. Good evening, June Tierney, Commissioner, Vermont Department of Public Service.
Hi, June, welcome.
Hi, Emily. I'm sorry to hear you're not interested in running again.
It's been a joy and an honor, but I think it's time for me to pass the torch.
All right, let's keep going.
Lissa Weinman.
Hi, Lissa Weinman, citizen appointee of former Senate Pro Tem Becca Ballant. Hello.
Welcome, Lisa. Hi. Dr. Bill Irwin.
Good evening, Bill Irwin, representing the Agency of Human Services, and I work for the Vermont Department of Health.
Welcome, Bill. Good evening. Brett Long. I did not catch his name in the list.
Yeah, I don't think he's here. He did say he'd be joining, but I haven't seen any indication that he's joined yet.
Perhaps he'll come late. Representative Laura Sibilia.
Not yet.
Senator Mark McDonald. Mark McDonald. Chris Campany.
Hey, Chris Campany, Winter Regional Commission.
Hi, Chris. Corey Daniels.
Good evening, Corey Daniels, NorthStar representative.
Corey. David Pearson.
Good evening, David Pearson, NorthStar representative.
Next, we would have Madeline Arms, but I know that Maddie is away right now, so she can't join us, Representative for Verdon. But then we also have Todd Amato.
I think Todd's been having some connectivity issues. He's joined a couple of times, and I guess he got kicked off again.
Yeah, I saw that too. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay.
He may just have to dial in.
Yeah, I did see Todd come up a little bit. I'll count him in for when we do the vote. And then Bob Leach.
Bob Leach here, appointed by the governor.
Hey, Bob. Finally, we have, last but not least, Marvin Resnikoff.
Last but not least.
Not least.
From Brattleboro.
Good evening, Marvin. And then we do have, so here's where we're going to check just to make sure that we have quorum. Steve, we're trying to get you in as the, to fill in the vacancy that we had, one of the two vacancies that we had, the second citizen appointee of the Speaker of the House. Or I'm sorry, no, this was the citizen appointee for the governor. What can you? I'm not aware of what status your that is.
Yes. I received a notice from the governor's office on Friday. Tracy DeLude. She says that I've been appointed effective immediately or today, which was Friday, and so Yes, I do have the certificate here from the governor's office.
Okay,
That's good to me.
And
There
I
you
can
go. I
con-
recognize
can
that.
confirm, I can confirm the appointment.
Okay, great,
The
great.
governor's office wasn't in touch with me and to let me know that indeed occurred.
Welcome, Steve. You made it.
Yes, I did, Bob. Thank you. And thank you all for being here and being faithful to the cause of nuclear decommissioning over the years.
Yeah, and so welcome, Steve. Yes, you are effective as of Friday. Welcome to the panel. Just to update everyone else, Josh Unruh has stepped down, I think effective also, and resigned from his position on Friday. And so, Steve, you are resuming the appointee of the governor, that position. So we're so grateful that you're willing to join the panel. Welcome. I understand that you have served on the NDCAP in prior years. Is that right?
Yes, I was actually on the NDCAP when it was first formulated, representing the town of Vernon. And I believe in 2018 or 19, I think I took a leave of absence, but was asked if I'd be interested in coming back. And so here I am. I remain a resident of Vernon. I have many years of experience at Vermont Yankee, and I know some of the folks here on the panel, and it's great to see you all again.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're lucky to have your institutional wisdom.
Oh, well, hopefully it comes through.
So panel, then we just have one remaining vacancy that would now be the citizen appointee of the Speaker of the House. I do have someone who is potentially interested, but it's a little premature for that to happen right now. So just one vacancy on the panel. And with that, I think we can very surely confirm that we have quorum. So thank you all for being here. Then we'll move right along to review and approval of the September 19th meeting minutes. This is posted onto the website. Give folks a chance to review them. Offer any changes?
Yeah, Madam Chair, yeah, I did notice a couple of typos as I reviewed the minutes this afternoon. Bear with me for a moment. I'm going to try to get them onto the screen if I can find the actual screen here again. Here we go. Any moment now. Okay, folks should be able to see the meeting agenda. Just bear with me a moment as I jump over to the minutes. And it looks like we have Laura Sibilia joining. Anyway, the items on page 6 of the minutes at line number 7, you'll notice I have the word that highlighted. That should actually be than. And moving down to line number 12, you'll see that I have looking new highlighted. There should be a 4 in there, so it would read looking for new members. And a little bit further down on line 17, the AND, the and between Citizens Awareness Network and VT NDCAP should be an at. So it would read Citizens Awareness Network at VT NDCAP meetings. And then on the next page, we just have one line that needs correction. Line 12, IBEW's comments, there should be an on after comments. The NRC, and rather than it being NRC, it should be NRC apostrophe S. So it should read, should consider endorsing IBEW's comments on the NRC's decommissioning rulemaking. So those were the items I found. I don't know, has anyone else found anything else?
Move that we make a motion to accept the meetings as written with the typos corrected.
And I second the motion. This is Lissa.
Thank you, Bob and Lissa. All in favor? We'll just say aye or raise a hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any noes? Great. Thank you, everyone. So we have approved the September 19th meeting minutes. So next we'll go right into the NorthStar update on VUI site decommissioning activities. So we'll pass it over to Corey Daniels. After that, we'll move through the state agency updates on VUI decommissioning, and then we'll take panel question and answer, and then question and answer period from the public. That's kind of how we'll proceed through. So Corey, if you're ready, you can take it away.
Thanks, Emily. All right, next screen, Tony. And I'm not sure if you can make these full page or not for the presentation. It'll be a little easier to see the photos for folks if that's possible, Tony.
Yeah, bear with me for a moment. I always forget how to do this. Wait a second. Let me try one thing. Come on. Okay, hopefully people can see the full screen now.
Nice job, Tony. You got it.
Okay. Okay.
All right, like every presentation, we explain NorthStar's priorities, and it really comes down to safety with everything we do, making sure all radiological, environmental, industrial, and nuclear safety considerations are maintained. We have a firm belief that if we do things right, we do them safe, things will happen appropriately and we will be successful. So we continue with that theme. And that picture happens to be the very last custom box of reactor components leaving the site on its way to Texas. Next slide, please. Speaking of safety, we just rolled over 1.4 million hours worked on site without a lost time accident. A pretty outstanding record in the last 4 years since NorthStar took over ownership. We continue with our safety performance and engagement with all of our staff. And we look forward to making that happen again in 2023. Our regulatory performance continues to be good. We've had no cited violations since taking over ownership of the site. And overall production is acceptable. With the reactor removal project complete, the remainder of the decommissioning activities are happening quite in advance of the initial projections, and the site characterization continues well at a schedule with no surprises or issues to date. Next slide, please. This is a macro of the project schedule. I usually put this up every presentation. I think I forgot it once, and we got some pretty good questions of what I was missing. Overall, this is just a representation that the main project will continue with spent fuel management until the Department of Energy figures out a solution for taking the waste. That's the blue bar at the top. And then the other activities showing site restoration, final site surveying will happen pretty much through 2026. The large component removal is pretty much finished with. And then the demo of the larger building is in structures show up throughout the next couple of 3 years. And while those are not hard schedule dates, that is pretty much the coordinated effort of those major project efforts. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the reactor vessel segmentation is done. So all the pictures that you got to see for the different ways we were dismantling the reactor, the work is finished and it is completely gone. Everything's been shipped to Texas, as I mentioned. Next slide. In addition to finishing up the reactor vessel segmentation work, the last few pieces of irradiated hardware that were part of the reactor vessel that qualified as greater than Class C waste, which is still low-level waste, but requires special handling, and it will require storage until, again, there's a geological repository or location to place it, or we are able to send it to shallow burial landfills, which currently is not allowed. It has been placed on the ISFSI along with the remainder of the suspended nuclear fuel dry storage canisters, and it will live there until we're able to move it off-site. And that is a picture of the vertical cast transporter placing that in its location. Next slide. For the last time, we're draining the spent fuel pool. If you actually look closely towards the bottom of the picture of the pool, you can see a water level. It's probably about 15 feet down there or so. There normally is about 288,000 gallons of water in the spent fuel pool, which equates to around 14 tanker loads of water. We shipped tanker load number 8 off today, so we're over halfway down draining that, cleaning it for the last time, and then we'll clean the rest of the refuel floor up, and we will start demolition on that structure as well, and we'll tear the spent fuel pool apart that served us so well for so many years at the Yankee. Next slide. In the very bottom of the reactor building, we have a large donut-shaped tank called the Taurus. It's toroidal shaped, and that's where its name's derived from. It used to be there in case there was ever an accident that needed to absorb the energy from the reactor. It was halfway full of water. You're looking on the left-hand side of an interior photo of the large pipe that runs around the circumference of it with these downcomer legs where that steam and pressure energy would be dispersed underwater. And the picture on the right gives you a little bit of scale as to just how big this tank is with the 2 workers down there. And we have now removed one of the bays, or 1/16 of the Taurus. And if you recall in previous presentations, for those of you who are here regularly, we set up a monorail system to allow the movement of that material from the basement of the reactor building, which is at a slightly lower elevation, into the turbine building, where it can then be picked up with the reactor building crane and loaded into rail cars for transportation and disposal. Next slide. And that is actually a picture of us testing that monorail system that allows us to move 40,000 pounds of material at a time out of the reactor building and into the turbine building. And again, that work on the Taurus will go well into next year. That's a pretty significant project. So, next slide, please. Also in the reactor building, but up a couple of floors. Those of you recall that we talk about our reactor building floors by sea level elevation. The ground floors are the 252-foot level. The 280-foot level is actually the first floor up in the reactor building. This is where some of the largest components in the reactor building, single components, were housed. The recirc motor generator sets, the drive motors that actually recirculated the water through pumps in the reactor were up on this level. They have all been since removed, and even these pedestals are now gone, and this floor is pretty much cleaned out. This photo is about 4 weeks old. Next slide, please. So not just the recirc motor generator set and drive motors, but also the recirc pumps themselves were removed. And this is actually an entryway into the containment structure, the area directly around where the reactor vessel used to live. In fact, you can kind of see the round shaped wall in front of the gentleman standing by that rolled sled or wheel rolled sled. And that's what we call the bioshield, or the area directly around where the reactor was housed. And this is where the equipment hatch was. and large components can be moved in and out of containment. So a number of items are coming out of the containment area and being transported for disposal through this hatchway. And this is on the ground floor of the reactor building. Next slide, please. Over the turbine building, which is really getting very sparse, you can see some of our electricians on the left-hand photo looking at the wire trays and cable trays in the ceiling and figuring out how they're going to remove them. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the level of effort. And a lot of this is hand tool work, but folks are getting right up into the ceiling and cutting those cablings and all that de-energized components out of the ceiling and removing it. So this will go on for some time as well, and they've been working on this on and off for most of the year. Next slide, please. Around the side of the reactor building and kind of where the turbine building and the reactor building come together, we had the control building. This was where the control room lived. Beneath it was what we called the cable vault. And it's where most of the control wires and a lot of the power cabling came from the power plant portion into the control building and either went downstairs below it to the switchgear room, where a lot of the large 4,000 volt breakers were housed and power was distributed from the plant, or up above into the control room where all the instrumentation and controls were and the operators ran the reactor. But that entire building is now demolished, and you can see them separating the rebar from the concrete in this photo. Next slide, please. Just another photo of the level of effort that goes into the segregation of all those materials. In the foreground, you can see a lot of the cabling. We've been very fortunate to not have any elevated levels of PCBs in any of the wire sheaths and cable insulation. And a lot of that's able to be recycled. Same thing with the steel. You can see up in the upper left-hand side, and then a lot of the concrete right in front of the large excavator. So all that material gets separated out, and what can is recycled, and the rest is sent to landfill when it's clean. Next slide, please. And one of the larger components, you can see it kind of in behind the excavator there, is what we call the horizontal transfer system. It was a 3-bay concrete structure that had vault locations in it where we could store these shipping containers that we use for some of the materials that left site. That has been completely demolished, and now they're actually demolishing the concrete pad that was underneath of it at this time. So again, more material that has to be rubblized, shipped out site. Next slide, please. Took this photo just so you could see how big the structure is. For those of you who toured the site, recall the containment access building was connected to a large concrete airlock that then went into the reactor building. But this containment access building, you can see just to the left in the foreground there, the vertical gas transformer lived, and a lot of other equipment could be staged. And we used it for much of the Triton storage campaign, as well as reactor shutdown outages and refueling activities. We would stage large components and bring materials in and out of the reactor building. This entire building has been demolished. Next slide, please. And the upper left-hand photo, that is the same building on the right-hand side of that photo with all the panels taken off of it and just some of the ribs exposed as it's being toppled. And to the left of it is the concrete reactor airlock. And kind of just next to that excavator, you can see what looks like a big sliding barn door. Well, that's exactly what it was. It was a huge airlock door. It's been removed. So on the bottom left-hand side, you can see the containment access building completely demolished and the debris being separated. And then on the right-hand photo, you can see the excavator going after the concrete structure of the airlock itself, and all that has been removed now. Next slide, please. So from the other side, you get an idea just how much material that is from the demolition. And I'll get a good photo of it in the next NDCAP presentation, but we're really down to pretty much the turbine building and the reactor building with just a few other structures. And we'll put together a photo sort of before and after. You can see all the structure that's been removed. Next slide, please. As always, we keep all the material cleaned up and transported about as rapidly as we're able to aggregate it. And part of that's to manage the site safely and to keep everything moving. It also ensures that we have good controls over all the items that we have on site. And you can see a couple new photos here. One of the newer ones I've yet to see a double engine arrangement coming onto the site on that bottom photo. It was kind of a neat picture. You can see a number of the gondola cars on the upper right-hand side stage for removal. These operations are ongoing pretty much all the time. Next slide, please. And we continue to ship around 3 rail cars a week this time of year. That slows down a little bit with some of the holiday activities, and our staffing is a little bit lighter. Some folks take some vacations, but we are just about to crest, if we haven't this week, 500 shipments. We're well on track to meet our goal of 120 shipments for the year. And you can see we're creeping up on almost 60 million pounds of material. So a lot of material has left the site. Next slide, please. A little quick on one there, Tony.
Did I go one too many?
You did. If you could back up just one slide,
Okay.
a little more information to share.
Yeah, here we go.
There you go.
Sorry about that. The page advance is fighting back on me for whatever reason.
No problem. So generally try to update everyone on what's happening with the non-radiological characterization or remediation efforts. It's a good story. There's no new items identified or impacts. We've been working with Graham Bradley and a number of the other agencies on a bi-weekly call and with help from Aileen Aldrich and Nadia Glucksberg to regularly interface with the corrective action plans. And the 2 we have for impacted soils that were beneath the warehouse area of the turbine building, and then over where the advanced off gas structure near the old fuel storage tank were. Those corrective action plans have now been approved for implementation. We'll go after those at an appropriate time when all the real estate is available. We continue to make arrangements for split samples whenever appropriate or whenever requested with the state agencies. And so far to date, all the data continues to correlate. All right, a groundwater report was approved. And we are currently working on the groundwater monitoring program that is required by the MOU. We will be monitoring some wells for about 3 years after the D&T is complete. And we also recently shipped off a large shipment of mixed waste, which were really batteries that went to Texas for disposal. And as I mentioned, we continue to work with the agencies in a bi-weekly call to make sure there's no outstanding information needed or assistance on permitting, and they've been great in obliging us with all help we need. And that's about it for the non-rad stuff. And thanks, Tony, perfect timing. And just a reminder that we do things right, we do them safe, and the job gets done, and everybody's happy with the results.
Thank you so much, Corey.
You're welcome. And that rainbow's ending right about where the control building used to be. So there's a little moment of silence there for those of us who spent a dozen years or so or more of their life in that room.
So next we'll turn to the state agency update from the Department of Environmental Conservation. And since Trish Coppolino is not here, Graham Bradley, this is you? Yes. So if you're ready, Graham, go ahead.
Sure. I'm just going to expand a little bit upon what Corey was explaining, Corey's last slide there. So I'm with the sites management section of the Waste Management and Prevention Division. So we're responsible for compliance with the investigation and remediation of contaminated properties rule in Vermont, but I also coordinate with my colleagues in other permitting programs within the DEC. We're responsible for ease of communication. The bi-weekly meetings are the main means that we do that Corey just spoke of, between the state agencies, NorthStar, and their consultants, Haley and Aldrich. We provide oversight and review and approval of site investigations, which were conducted a year or two ago, actually before I came on board. Also the ongoing groundwater monitoring, post-demolition surveys, and I'll say a few more words about that in a couple of slides. Corrective action plans, where we know there is non-radiological contaminants in the ground, mainly hydrocarbons associated with waste oil and fuel oil. The way that we regulate that, the responsible party and their consultant, in this case, Haley and Aldrich, put together a plan to deal with that contamination, and we review and approve that, and also provide oversight of the actual implementation of that plan to make sure it's done according to how they say they're going to do it. I'll say a few words in a couple more slides about the various permitting sections, which have also got some involvement in this project. Next slide, please, Tony. Whoop, that jumped one.
There we go.
There we go. Groundwater monitoring program. Nothing has really happened since the last NDCAP meeting. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we've gone down from 70 wells, quite comprehensive investigation of the groundwater, to 19. And then just before I came on board at the beginning of this year, we were actually just down to 4 wells, monitoring wells. And we were conducting 4 monitoring rounds a year. And the contaminants, there's some local exceedances of volatile organic compounds. These are associated with oils, use of oils on site, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and PFAS. The monitoring program in those 4 wells is currently suspended during demolition and decommissioning activities. They're likely to be destroyed anyway, so we want to abandon them in place, making sure those are sealed so there's no pathways for contaminated groundwater to move between different parts of the aquifer. And Haley and Aldrich are currently putting together the post-completion monitoring plan following decommissioning. And I owe them some comments at the moment based on the monitoring that's been conducted so far, in terms of what we expect of that monitoring plan and how to address those local exceedances. Next slide, please. A big part of our involvement is corrective actions, where we know there is non-radiological contamination. And there's 2 areas that I have approved corrective action plans for in the last few months. One's a large, so this is sort of south of the reactor building, what we're calling area of concern 7A, where there was a large above ground fuel oil storage tank and a smaller waste oil above ground storage tank. The other area where we know there was soil contamination is just southwest of the turbine building, what we're calling area of concern number 5, which was again fuel impacted soils. They're both, the corrective actions are very similar in each case. based on the soil sampling and groundwater sampling that's been done as part of the investigation. Haley and Aldrich have identified an area to be excavated. Those will be excavated. Then there'll be confirmatory sampling of the soils on the bottom and sides of that excavation to make sure they've got all of that contaminated soil. There will be that'll be stockpiled and managed on site until that waste soil has been characterized prior to off-site disposal. And that, I understand, is, well, those soil materials will essentially, they'll be shipped to Texas together with radiological waste, forming ballast in those shipment containers. Meanwhile, the restoration will involve replacing that contaminated soil with clean soil, and we'll be provided with a completion report for review and approval. So those plans have been approved, but that work is unlikely to occur until towards the end of 23, possibly even into 2024. Next slide, please. So these are areas where we don't have previous evidence of contamination from the site investigation, but where there is potentially a source, Haley and Aldrich are conducting post-demolition surveys, and we employ a consultant, Atlas, who are our eyes, ears, and noses on site, looking over their shoulders to look for evidence of contaminated soil, whether that is visual evidence, soil staining, olfactory, whether there's any hydrocarbon smells, etc. Also using something called a photoionization detector, a semi-quantitative way of determining if there's any hydrocarbons in those soils. And so there's been a post-demolition survey done of the former spray pond area, which was not a source during its during the lifetime of the plant, but there was contaminated soil stockpiles stored there. So it's a very conservative approach. When that was removed, just to make sure there was no contamination of the soils below the spray pond as a result of positioning those stockpiles there. The other survey was done in the area of the interim off-gas system. Now, there's others on this call more qualified to talk about what this, the purpose of this exactly. It was a temporary structure where steam coming from the plant went through carbon beds and condensers, primarily as a system to prevent any discharge of radioactivity. But again, being cautious, Haley and Aldrich surveyed this area, looking for visual and olfactory evidence, non-radiological contamination. None was identified at either of these locations. Next slide, please. So this is just a brief overview of some of the other programs within DEC, permitting programs that my colleagues work in. I am not directly involved with these, but I'm sort of these work directly with NorthStar and with Haley and Aldrich, and I'm kind of a go-between if required, and keeping an overview of what everybody is doing. And Corey already mentioned the off-site battery shipment. There's an area where septage was being, as I understand it, sprayed on the fields. That was being regulated by the residuals program. That's no longer taking place, but before that certificate can be closed, there's samples taken to ensure there's no contaminants in that area above the Vermont standards. Public drinking water program, continuing with the general compliance program for the on-site public drinking water well. Direct discharge program has recently update the permit for water discharges to the Connecticut River, stormwater program. I think the letters are in the wrong order there for the Independence spent fuel storage installation. Because that's going to remain on site, it's a large impervious area that requires a permit. And we're currently waiting for the application. Our Rivers program's been working with the Army Corps of Engineers and with Helen Aldrich in the design and permitting of the riverbank restoration following removal of that, the water inlet and outlet structures. And also Helen Aldrich have been working with the DEC Air Quality and Climate Division, looking at where permits are required due to the on-site generators. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Graham. Next, we'll turn to the Public Service Department. Eric, are you there? And set up. I'll give Tony a minute to change the slides too.
Oh, come on, you stupid thing. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here. This should, there we go. Third time was the charm. Yay, and let's get back to full screen.
Thanks, Tony. Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Guzman. I'm special counsel with the Public Advocacy Division of the Department of Public Service. I'll just be providing a brief update on the Nuclear Decommissioning Trust and Site Restoration Trust disbursements and balances, as well as just some general updates since NDCAP's last meeting in September. Joining me on the call are Nicholas Kapik and Mark Amir from 4 Points Group, and they are the department's financial and technical consultants who assist the department with its review of the Vermont Yankee decommissioning. So Tony, if you can just change the slide. Thank you. Just as a reminder, and for anyone who hasn't attended NDCAP before, the department maintains a technical and financial oversight role through the decommissioning process. With respect to its financial review, the department reviews the financial performance of the project to ensure there's adequate funding to carry the project to completion. We review the financial health of NorthStar Group Services itself, and continually assess the additional financial assurances that were committed to by NorthStar under the Memorandum of Understanding that was approved by the Public Utility Commission. And with respect to the technical review, the department and its consultants confirmed that the work performed by NorthStar is reasonable and consistent with the Site Restoration Trust and Nuclear Decommissioning Trust withdrawals, as well as identify any risks or concerns that can challenge a successful completion of decommissioning. Just as some examples of department actions, to facilitate its review, the department reviews monthly and annual financial disclosures and project progress reports that we receive from NorthStar, as well as the trust disbursement notices. We also engage in monthly meetings with NorthStar to address any questions on their monthly and annual submissions. The department's consultants conduct regular site visits every few months to verify that the work reported on the project progress reports has been done. And the department also publishes the publicly available financial reporting summaries to the department's Vermont Yankee decommissioning page. Next slide, please, Tony. The tables here are the most recent monthly trust disbursement notice amounts since NDCAP's last meeting. Table 1 lists the disbursement values per month for the NDT, the Nuclear Decommissioning Trust, and Table 2 is the disbursement values for the Site Restoration Trust. The NDT balance sits at rough as of the most recent balance reporting on November 30th. It sits at 188.3 million. In the Site Restoration Trust balance sits at 51.1 million. And all disbursements are made to NorthStar for work that's already been completed. Next slide, please, Tony. In Table 3 is the summary of trust balances since September. And below that are a general summary of 3 components of the decommissioning work that are separated by license termination activities, spent fuel management, and site restoration. The license termination activities total 536.2 million. As of November 30th, the work earned or amount earned is totaled at 346.2 million, leaving 190 million remaining to complete license termination work. The Nuclear Decommissioning Trust balance sits at 188.3 million after unrealized losses as of November 30th. And I'll get into a little more detail on that reported difference in the next slide. As far as the spent fuel management costs, those total 290.9 million. NorthStar has earned 26 million as of November 30th, leaving 264.3 required to manage spent fuel until it is removed from the site. NorthStar anticipates collecting a large sum of that 276.5 from the Department of Energy for those spent fuel costs. And finally, the site restoration costs total at 25 million as of November 30th. NorthStar has earned 12.5, leaving another 12.5 to complete the work. And the Site Restoration Trust Fund sits at 51.1 million as of the most recent reporting balance. Next slide, please, Tony. The last site visit that the department's consultants conducted was late September, where the work activities for the turbine building, reactor building, refueling floor, and so on were observed. No conditions were observed during that site visit that were inconsistent with those project progress reports reported by NorthStar for July, August, and September. And then, as I mentioned earlier, regarding the NDT balance, the NDT funds are primarily invested in U.S. Treasury securities that are reflective of current market conditions. And those U.S. Treasury securities will typically normalize as they approach maturity. In the 188.3 balance figure accounts for unrealized market losses that would occur if those securities were liquidated prior to maturity. And so provided those securities are held to maturity, as NorthStar has done and intends to continue doing, the projected value of the NDT is currently 193.3 million, not including those current reflected losses. Additionally, the Memorandum of Understanding requires NorthStar to maintain certain other financial assurances. Included within that is a 55 million financial assurance escrow in case the Nuclear Decommissioning Trust proves to be insufficient to complete the work. However, despite that, the progress based on the last approved schedule provided by NorthStar in the annual financial reporting and monthly reporting that we receive, the department's consultants find that the work completed to be reasonable, and NorthStar appears to be on course to complete the project with available funding. And that is all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. The next would be additional state agencies, if needed or as needed. Bill, I don't know if you have anything from the Department of Health that you'd like to share. I didn't see any slides, but
No, I don't have any slides, Emily, but the Department of Health participates in the bi-weekly meetings with NorthStar, DEC, and others. We also go on tours of the facility throughout the year to see the progress. We also track all of the radioactive waste movement from the site and are by statute collecting data on those shipments through the state. And we're pleased to be seeing the progress with safety and security in mind, and hope to continue to see that through the end of the decommissioning.
great, thank you. Then we'll shift over to panel question and answer on either the NorthStar decommissioning update or any questions for our friends of the state agencies.
I got a couple. The DEC program, the certificate that was canceled for the that was for the transfer or the spreading of the septic tank on the property. That was primarily because they were measuring a slight amounts of radioactivity in the bottom of the septic tank where it was concentrated. Is they convinced themselves that it's not building up radioactivity there anymore, or have they got other plans made for the septage that's in that tank?
So since we are regulating non-radiological contaminants, that issue hasn't come to my attention. I'm also fairly new to the project, so I'm not sure if NorthStar, if Corey, you're able to speak to that, or
Bill Irwin.
I would have to go away and look at that issue.
Yeah, this is Bill Irwin from Health. I'm unaware of any actions with regard to that. I would actually hope that Corey might be able to share with us some update there. I don't think anything's changed there. It's just that they're no longer actually doing the disposals that they were during operations. The material still remains in the ground there.
So Bob, I can jump in with that a little bit. You're correct. There are trace measurements of radionuclides. They will be well below the DGCLs or the required concentration levels for us to complete the decommissioning at. The septic system was sized for extremely large staff, and including outages when we would bring extra 1,000 people on site. Can't regulate everything that everybody eats. So, medicines and things that go in, even PFASs and other materials end up in septic systems. But at this point, we will never need to spread septic again. And we'll continue to monitor that and make a decision on dispositioning it towards the end of the decommissioning. But it's likely that that stuff will just stay right where it is.
Okay. Next question I have is for Corey, if you don't mind. That last tank of greater than Class C waste that was put out there on the pad, have you folks calculated that out in history and see if there's any time in a reasonable future that decay will make that stuff less than Class C?
Yeah, Bob, the radionuclides in those metals, extremely unlikely in our lifetime that it would ever be below levels that would require to be treated as greater than Class C waste. It's still low-level waste, but it's pretty highly activated.
Yeah. Okay. I can't help but ask, is the diesel engine still there?
I'm sorry, repeat that, please.
The diesel engines, I'm looking at your one print here of the mufflers up on top of where the diesels used to be. Are they still there?
The diesels are mostly destroyed, and they'll be getting torn out and thrown away as waste. A little bit of it's left, but not much.
I just had to ask.
It's okay.
And one other question, looking at this picture of the access to the containment, and I see a guy standing there without no PCs on. I don't see a step-off pad. Is the containment now a non-controlled area, or?
Not all of it, but enough of it can be clean enough that we can accommodate operations without dressing out in locations. It's surprising to myself included just how accessible the site is, even with the dismantlement of most of the steam plant and all the radioactive systems. But could pick up on that looking at the slides.
I wanted to congratulate you if you got that much of the containment clean.
A lot of that is attributable to 43 years of very conservative decision-making with the operation of the plant. Not every boiling water reactor will be so fortunate.
Steve and I thank you for the compliment.
Well,
That's all I had.
certainly operations went a long way towards achieving that success. I had one other question to follow up on Bob's, if whenever you get to my turn.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, the last that I knew, the tritium problem in the groundwater was still there was still measurable amounts. What is the status of that these days? Is that pretty much wound down to nothing, or how are we looking there?
So Steve, the water that infiltrates into the turb building, and it is variable on the seasons, but it's well controlled now. It's usually somewhere between a couple hundred and maybe 500 or 600 gallons per day, which it is right now in the wetter season. The amount of tritium that it picks up leaching through the concrete is still detectable, but it's well below the limits that would preclude us from using the water on site. In the range of a few hundred to 1,000 or maybe 2,000 picocuries per liter. And for perspective, for folks who are unfamiliar, the EPA drinking water standard is 20,000 picocuries per liter. So you could drink this water technically. You wouldn't have to test it if it came out of your tap, but we still collect it all, and we do ship it off-site to be disposed of in Texas, where they mix it with bentonite and solidify it. But we are still shipping that water, unfortunately, but it's a cost we have accounted for, and we'll continue to do so until we're ready to fill the building.
Very good. Certainly much lower than back in the 2010 range, I guess. Right?
Yes, and it all dropped down with no source term predictably and continued to reduce as we would expect. Marvin, I see your hand up as well.
Thank you.
Yes, I had a question about the Department of Energy reimbursement to NorthStar. Is that the standard ratio, the standard percentage that other companies have received?
I'm not sure, Marvin, exactly what your question is referring to as far as reimbursement.
Well, reimbursement for handling the spent fuel on the site. You are getting reimbursed from the Department of Energy for handling that spent fuel, I assume. And you mentioned two numbers. One is how much it's going to cost and how much you're going to be reimbursed from the Department of Energy. And I'm just asking whether that's the standard fraction that others have received.
I don't believe there is a standard fraction. I know that was on Eric Guzman's slides. Those are, projections for anticipated costs. Ultimately, not every licensee does it the same way. Some organizations have reached a settlement with the Department of Energy and the DOJ. We will continue to litigate for all dollars spent as required to take care of the spent fuel costs. We have yet to do a round as NorthStar owners by ourselves The last round was actually done by Entergy, and we will continue in the same effort and by the use and knowledge of our peers to perform that, to hopefully recover as much money as we spend with spent fuel management, as long as we continue to do it prudently.
So that's an estimate, in other words, that you have listed, well, I think on Eric's slide, Eric Guzman's slide, an estimate of how much you expect to get returned from the Department of Energy.
That's correct.
And I had one other question about that, which is regarding the greater than Class C waste. Do you also get a fraction of the cost for handling that and storing that from the Department of Energy, or is that entirely your dollar?
So again, going on precedent, and we have yet to file a recovery case with the Department of Energy. We have evidence where others have filed for the activities related to the storage of greater than Class C waste, as well as their spent nuclear fuel, as a result of there being no geological repository for which that waste to be disposed of in. So we'll see. We like to believe that we will recover those funds, and we have taken care of the packaging and that material in a manner that should support our recovery efforts. So we'll see, and we'll let you know as we do so.
I have one final question also regarding finances, which is there has been a general drop in the value of the Treasury securities over the past year. And I just wondered whether the numbers that Eric has factor that into account. In other words, you still have enough money to proceed to decommission the site, despite the fact that the Treasury securities have dropped somewhat.
Hi, Marvin. Yes, so the value that the 180, if you look on table 3 of the slide, those values are the current balance accounting for that unrealized loss from the U.S. Treasury securities. When you so NorthStar has provided us the balance taking out that unrealized loss, assuming that those Treasury securities are held to maturity, and that puts it up well above the necessary amount for work completed. And NorthStar has traditionally and held those securities to maturity.
Yes, and I noticed that you indicated that if you hold them to maturity, that they will rise over, and they probably will rise over the next year.
Right, and yeah, that's something that we're keeping an eye on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, Alyssa, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I had a question for Corey, and for some reason, I don't see the raise hand function on my screen, but so sorry about that. Corey, you mentioned that, in passing that you would potentially be shipping some of the waste to another facility if it wasn't illegal. I didn't really catch that. And I was just curious, is there another facility that you would like to be shipping some of the, I guess it's the low level waste to, but you can't at this point? I just wanted to pick up on that.
You may have misheard me, Alyssa, but what I meant to infer was because there is no deep geological repository, there is no facility that can accept the greater than Class C waste.
Right. Okay. Okay, I got it. Sorry. It just came out of the blue. And then one other question, because of Bob's question about the workers, I was just curious about, the protocols regarding the workers' potential exposures, and how is that monitored in terms of the workers' health as they go about their duties? Is that like just generally everybody is sort of screened regularly when they leave, or, how do you monitor the potential exposures of workers at the site?
That's a great question, Lisa, and it kind of backs into our safety philosophy and our protocols. Most industry standards set conservative limits well above the federal requirements for annual dose exposures for occupational workers. We do the same thing. We have a conservative threshold. We spread any of the work around that may necessitate the receiving of dose by individuals, and we keep our folks apprised of their total dose accumulation on an annual basis, on a weekly basis, and the teams, the jobs that they do are determined somewhat that consideration taken into place. But for the most part, we really are running out of places to get any significant dose with all the major work completed. So it only gets easier from that perspective, but it doesn't change our institutional controls or our approach to keeping people and the acronym is ALARA, right, as low as reasonably achievable. Mm-hmm. We'll put engineering controls or other efforts in place to eliminate dose wherever we can. And part of NorthStar's expertise with the large equipment and bringing in specialists like Alano with the vessel segmentation and our other industry peers that we've learned from have only improved the decommissioning process and allowed us to do it efficiently with a small amount of people.
Okay, thank you. And really great job. It's pretty amazing what you've been able to accomplish. And I know a lot of it has to do with you, Corey. So thank you.
I'm just one person. We were very fortunate to put together a very experienced team with a lot of truly talented staff and outside the box thinking folks. So it's a team sport, but appreciate your confidence.
Okay, panelists, anything else? If not, then we'll open it up to public question and answer for NorthStar presentation or any of the state agency presentations. And the raise hand function is under reactions. I think it moved since last time. Maybe Zoom had done an update. So I switched to gallery view so I think I see everyone. If you want to just raise your hand in the video, or if you want to raise your hand, then I can call on you. Okay, Skylar Gold, and if you could please introduce yourself as I call on you. Go ahead.
Yes, great, thank you. Yeah, I'm Skylar Gold. I'm with the Citizens Awareness Network. I have just one question. This may be not out of order, but out of schedule around perhaps for Mr. Bradley or for Corey. I'm wondering about the pipes, the underground pipes. I understand that the pipes below 4 feet are allowed to stay there if they're thoroughly characterized, found to be non-radioactive, and then filled with grout. I hope I have that right. And I was wondering just how that process works, just a brief outline of how do you get into every pipe and understand what its contamination is? Is that coming up soon? You seem to be running out of things to do.
Well, I want to take a shot at it, Graham, and you can follow up. Great question, Skylar. Surprisingly few of the process lines at the facility have radionuclides in them overall. I mean, there are some that are below grade. Most of them are in concrete chases or hallways, and the ones that aren't, even those ones will all be removed. The other lines, and you're really close, I think the wording in the MOU says stabilize. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to be filled with grout. You think about it, there are some lines that are buried 25 feet below ground and there's railroad tracks going over them. They're pretty stable to begin with. But there will be some demonstration of the interior of those pipes to be sampled or surveyed to confirm that. And there's a whole slew of requirements associated with the final status survey process and the license termination plan and the NRC requirements that are also similar in nature to demonstrating the different class areas on the site are either remediated or cleaned to the extent that allow the decommissioning determination of readiness for partial site release. So all those things will happen in process, but it's not quite as complicated as you might think it is, just by the nature of we know where everything is and we know which pipes had what in them. And historically, you know, if you had a surface water line or a circulating water line that just had river water in it, you know, it's not going to have any radionuclides in it, and we're still going to sample it and prove it, and then we'll disposition it as you just described.
Very good. Thank you.
Just to add a few words, as Corey's spoken to the radiological, potential radiological contamination and the actual process of decommissioning those pipes. Before I got involved, I mean, there's over the last 2 or 3 years to begin with, there was a very detailed assessment of potential sources of non-radiological contamination and a detailed investigation. So we have approved the corrective action plan to deal with areas where we know, due to that investigation, where there is non-radiological contamination, and where there is excavations taking place, then we are, well, Haley and Aldrich with Atlas looking over their shoulder are doing that post-demolition, post-excavation survey to ensure that we're not missing any non-radiological contamination in the ground.
Very good. Thanks.
Okay, Anne, you're up.
Hi, thanks. I'm Ann Darling, also with the Citizens Awareness Network. Corey or anyone, you were talking about greater than Class C and no permanent repository. And I just wondered if you are aware of or any legislative or regulatory or effort to change some of those rules around greater than Class C to make it able to ship it away from reactor sites, or if NorthStar has any thoughts about maybe, you know, being able to accept that in the future.
Seeing no one else jumped in, Ann, I'll take a shot at that. Nice to see you, Ann.
Hi.
I think there was some initial discussions, and I think a couple of years ago there was also some discussions on potential changes to allow states with low or shallow burial waste facilities to consider licensing them for greater than Class C disposal, but I don't think anything ever really came of it. It's a little bit of a tricky subject to get into because there are other materials that are also low-level waste, but not greater than Class C,
right?
Have just as much or more aggregated mercury content or radioactive material in them that can be buried in a shallow facility. So I think there's still some more to happen on that before legislatively that's an option. But right now, I'm not aware of anything that's in the near future that's going to happen to make it occur.
Thank you. I saw Tony had a reaction too.
Yeah, I was just nodding my head that what Corey's describing is my understanding as well. I'll note that the effort that Corey mentioned, WCS, early on, in other words, 2014, 2015 timeframe or so, was looking at, well, could they actually accept greater than Class C waste? That, you know, that would have required state of Texas to be allowed to carry out regulatory authority for monitoring the waste. But I would say that all of that effort ceased about the time that the Lehman Company, which is the parent owner of NorthStar, came into the picture with WCS. I haven't heard anything since WCS became a sister company to NorthStar. So,
All right, thanks.
Okay, anyone else here to ask any questions? The presentations? So I don't see any hands, and then we'll move along to any early general public comments if folks aren't able to stay to the end of the meeting and to the rest of the NDCAP business. No public comments?
Well, I'll just say I have my perennial question about public outreach and education and the importance of that. We could talk about that later sometime.
Okay. Wait, is there a comment you would like to add, or just flagging that for a further?
I didn't see it on the agenda, so I just wanted to use your word, to flag it as something that's important.
Duly noted. Thank you, Anne. Then if there's nothing else, next up panel is potential endorsement of the IBEW decommissioning rulemaking comments. So just as a reminder, this came up in our last meeting, which was a September 19th meeting. And as the IBEW had developed these comments to submit to the NRC rulemaking. The rulemaking is entitled, and I can pull it up here. Just as a reminder, the regulatory improvements for production and utilization facilities transitioning to decommissioning. And this is on the agenda for potential endorsement. So I'll open it up for discussion. Chris, I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to get discussion going, I was going to make a motion to endorse or support.
Thank you. We have a motion. Any discussion?
I'll second.
You need a second. Yeah.
Second the motion.
I'd offer just a small amount of discussion for our panel members, if that's all right, Emily. And so folks know, the specific recommendation by the IBEW would have pretty much no bearing on the Vermont Yankee decommissioning. It would really have to do with decommissioning going forward with respect to plans for decommissioning being submitted and approved by the NRC. I would say that the folks in Vermont and the surrounding states have done a pretty admirable job of engaging themselves. A pretty extensive MOU has been constructed to allow the amenable decommissioning of Vermont Yankee, and pretty impressive public engagement has occurred as a result of the process. So as a former IBEW member and no dog in the fight at this point with that particular endorsement, I just wanted people to know that I feel like we have effectively accomplished what that endorsement would intend to do for other decommissionings with the Vermont Yankee decommissioning already.
Thank you, Corey.
Yeah.
Bob and then Lissa.
Well, along with what Corey has just said, I think by our charter, this is kind of outside the bounds of our charter anyway. And we shouldn't be endorsing or not endorsing the IBEW's comments. If we want to comment, or anybody on the committee wants to comment, that is perfectly acceptable to the NRC. They pretty much just look at comments as either pro or con. They stack them up in piles that amounts more on who they or what, how many they get for pro or con. And an endorsement, I don't know how they would even handle that, whether it be a pro or a con. But regardless, I think it's outside of our charter for what we're supposed to be doing.
Lissa?
I think it falls within our charter, actually, and I think that it would be considered a pro. It would go in the pro stack if we voted in favor of endorsing the IBEW. And for me, I think I mentioned it the last meeting. For me, you know, the workers who are doing this decommissioning really need to be supported at every step of the way. They're doing the hard work for us. And I think one of the things that we've learned and why it does fall in our purview as an NDCAP is that we know that keeping a plant in safe store or SAF store, however it's pronounced, for 60 years, which is still an available option under NRC rulemaking, really is not a great idea for a number of reasons. And we know because we had an MOU and we began work immediately because that is the right thing to do. And that is what the IBEW workers also feel, that work, you know, that a plant should not be shuttered for 60 years or 40 years or even 20 years. Work should begin as soon as possible to take advantage of the institutional knowledge, which we've benefited from greatly at VY. You can see these faces around the table tonight and know it's one of the reasons things are going well there. And I think that that's why we should endorse this, because we have had a success. We do have the experience, and we are sharing that with other plants that might be facing the same thing now. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, Lissa. Marvin, was that a hand or was that a headphones adjustment? Oh, sorry. You're muted, Marvin. We can't hear you. Marvin, it sounds like you're saying something great, but we can't hear you. You're muted.
Unmute.
There you go.
I just wanted to, since Mr. Company has said we should first have a second before we have a discussion, I second the motion.
Okay, great. I think we did have a I think we're able to get a second in there from Steve, but it's good to know that there's the backup. Thank you, Marvin. Any other discussion, panelists? I guess I'm wondering, just, on the question of whether or not it fits within the charter, perhaps it would be good to know if there's any distinction between an endorsement of a comments that were submitted to a closed rulemaking period, which is what this is, versus the panel taking a position on something that might I'm looking for some wisdom here for those who are procedurally might know if that's a meaningful distinction for this discussion.
Got my hand up.
Oh, did you have, yeah, Bob?
Well, with what you're saying, I'm with you, what you just said. There's nothing in our charter that says we can endorse it. If we want to comment on it, then okay, we could go ahead and comment on the, not on the IBEW comment, but we can make our own comment, which nobody has decided they want to do. Or we can comment on it as individuals, which is probably better because they have more comments instead of just one.
Right. I mean, and perhaps it could have been more clear in the introduction. The comment period is closed to my knowledge. Is that right, Tony?
Yeah, this would be on the comment period that closed back on August 30th. What I'll point out, though, is that since we are a state-appointed panel, that states always have the opportunity to submit comments. It would just have to be submitted through our Nuclear Regulatory Commission liaison, which would be handled through me. So my only question on this would be is that if the panel does act on this, what would people want to be done with this? It just, do we note in the minutes that yes, we endorse this? Do we submit something to the NRC saying that yes, we endorse these comments? Or do we issue a press release that says yes, we issue it, that we endorse this, and leave it at that?
Good questions. Panel, what do you think? Steve, you had your hand raised, so I wanted to acknowledge you in case you want to get in there. If not, we can go to Laura Sibilia.
I had a question regarding whether this was in our charter. I have to look at that again, but it seems to me like individual comments would probably be what I would certainly support in this response to the IBEW letter. And I agree with Bob. If it's not in the charter, we have a lot of work as it is, and taking on more that isn't really specified is probably not to our best interest.
Hey, Steve. Laura?
Yes, hi. So looking at the charter, I actually think there's room for comment as part of the charter, as part of the public process. I think this panel has knowledge that is useful to the public related to this decommissioning. Having said that, I don't feel especially strongly one way or the other about doing that. But I do think that we could make a motion, see if there's a second, we could vote, and whether or not we want to weigh in. And then, I think Tony brought up great points about what that would look like. And I think we have some flexibility. But I do think that we have knowledge to share with the public. The knowledge that we have can be, I think, used to weigh in on this letter. So there you go.
Thank you. So were you proposing that we have a motion or take a vote on whether we can endorse the position or not, and then endorse the position or not? So
I was not proposing that.
Okay.
I was suggesting that if someone wanted to do that, I think it would be in order, and I think it would be fine in alignment with our charter. So I am not making that motion.
Okay.
I don't think we need a motion to see if I think it clearly falls under our charter to be able to do this because of the public education function and our experience. So I would just call the vote, realizing that some of the state agencies might not be able to vote. And it would just be to send a statement to NRC supporting the IBEW, simply stating that the NDCAP supports the IBEW position on the rulemaking, just for the record.
Okay, thank you.
So I would move to call the vote.
I do just want to, we don't have too many members of the public, and I see Skylar's comment. Skylar, did you want to add something really quick?
Am I still? Oh, I'm still here. I'm glad I wasn't talking to myself.
Here.
Well, it seems the panel is commissioned to advise the governor, the legislature, and the citizens of Vermont on all issues related to decommissioning. And with the Federal Nuclear Waste Policy Committee, which is exploring these issues, it adds to that all issues related to federal nuclear waste policy. So it seems eminently within the purview of the panel to comment on certainly an endorsement of this statement by IBEW constitutes a comment by the panel. I support it, by the way. That's
Thank you,
all.
Scott.
Thanks.
I just want to add to that, when we've talked in the committee to people like Mark Holt at the Congressional Research Service, or representatives from NRC, or people from the Spent Fuel Caucus and different legislative bodies, they are always saying how important feedback from groups like ours is to them and how much it's desired. So I think, just when you say we have a lot to do, well, we do have a lot to do, but it's good to endorse our workers, I think, in their position. And again, share the experience that the way that we've done it has been fairly successful up to this point. And part of the reason why is because it was done right away and there wasn't a waiting period. And that is one of the primary things that the IBEW statement promotes, which is why I thought it might be valuable to support it, so that no other community could find itself with a less aggressive governor or a less aggressive town government, whatever, and find themselves with a mothballed reactor for 60 years.
Marvin, you have your hand raised?
Yes, Alyssa has moved the question and I second that.
Okay, great.
Have a vote on whether we're going to vote.
We vote. I think that since we already have, I'm looking back to Chris, we already have, yeah, can we just vote on the motion that's already on the table? Chris, can you remind me what's already on the table?
Yeah.
Yeah, I moved that we support the IBEW position.
Okay, so it's supporting the IBEW position and writing a letter to the NRC stating that this panel supports the IBEW position.
And that's ostensibly all I would say.
Yes.
Was that the motion?
That's what's on the table. That's what was motioned and seconded. Well, with the exception, we did not say how it would be sent to the NRC. The motion was just vote to support the IBEW position, but we can discuss afterwards how it gets there. If it passes, it may not pass. It may go down in flames.
Right.
I just needed to ask a clarifying question, Emily, if I may.
Yes, please.
Dr. Irwin, you mentioned in the chat that you thought the state agencies might have to recuse themselves from this vote. And I think you indicated that the state would be filing comments. Is that correct?
Yeah, I thought that there were comments on this submitted by the state with other states at before the August 30th deadline. So I don't know if that would be something that would, as you say, suggest that we should recuse ourselves. But I thought you might have some actual legal opinion on that, or opinion from your position.
Yeah, the way I see it is that the state agencies are here tonight as members of NDCAP, and the discussion underway is whether NDCAP ought to take an action or not. And you're quite right, the state has acted independently in its own right as state actors to file comments. So I don't see on the face a reason why the state agencies have to recuse themselves. But if state agency representatives feel that they ought to, I certainly wouldn't discourage anybody from doing that.
Thank you.
That's all I needed to know. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you. Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. It is to support the IBEW comments on recent NRC rulemaking. Panel, are you ready for a vote on that motion? And so we'll go by roll call.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Okay, great. Emily Davis, aye. June Tierney?
Nay.
Lissa Weinman?
Aye.
Bill Irwin?
Aye.
Laura Sibilia?
Aye.
Chris Campany?
Aye.
Corey Daniels?
Nay.
Todd Amato. I don't know if Todd ever had trouble getting back in. Perhaps we lost Todd. Bob Leach,
No.
Marvin Resnikoff,
Aye.
and Steve Skibniewski.
Nay.
Okay. I think by my count that this motion passes. Is that right?
Yes.
Tony?
Assembly, it's David Pearson.
Oh, I'm so sorry, David. I don't
That's
know.
okay.
Right past you. I apologize. David Pearson.
I'm easily overlooked, but I would abstain.
Okay, thank you. I still believe that means that passes. So that motion passes. Okay, thank you, panel. Any more discussion on this or any further discussion on how now we're going to let anyone know about this? Or it can just be in our minutes.
I think there should, I thought that was part of my motion was to move the vote and to send a letter to the NRC supporting the IBEW position, so that the chair of the panel would send a letter on behalf of NDCAP endorsing IBEW's position on rulemaking. And I would also suggest we do a press release about it to further support IBEW's position.
Well, so we could do, just to be clear, you didn't actually, your motion to end conversation actually wasn't seconded. We didn't vote on it. But I would, yeah, we got along those lines. What I would suggest is just be very simple and factual. Just state NDCAP held a vote. This was the vote. X this many yeas, this many nays, and in support of the IBEW position. It could just be that simple.
Laura, have anything to add?
Yes, I would strongly concur with Chris. I would make it extremely brief, just about the action itself. We certainly will have minutes that will provide detail, and I believe there are members of the press here tonight.
Thank you for pointing that out. Alyssa, are you satisfied with that? Or?
Sure.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you, panel. Then I think we can move on to our next agenda item, which is the Federal Nuclear Waste Policy Committee update. So Alyssa, this is still with you.
Well, so we met last week and to talk about the minutes, and we added some language changes together to the minutes of the annual report. So that was accomplished. We also began to discuss topics for discussion for next year. We agreed that we would meet quarterly, continue meeting quarterly as a committee. We set dates for next year, March 6th, June 5th, September 11th, and December 4th. To meet, those are all first Mondays at noon, so we'll continue in that pattern. And we are inviting Diane Curran to discuss the legality, different arguments. She's an attorney who's working with Sen Onofre and others. I believe it was Marvin that had suggested her as a speaker. So we're inviting her to discuss the different ways that potential interim storage and private storage facilities either do or do not comport with existing law. And we are hoping to also bring in Jay Silberg, who tends to take a different approach from Ms. Curran on the same. So we would get a good hearing of both sides of whether or not the interim storage as envisioned in both the private scenario and the public scenario comport with existing law, or what laws would need to change to make those facilities able to be accomplished. So that would be the first meeting. We also contemplated doing a session on reprocessing spent nuclear fuel. So we're investigating that for a future discussion, as well as getting an update again from the Department of Energy regarding the consent-based siting and what's happening. And, you know, it would be basically, we met with them a year ago and heard what they had to say. They were just beginning this process. So we'd like to just keep in close contact with them and find out what's happening. I don't know if anybody has seen the latest news. I was kind of shocked to see that the head of spent fuel management for DOE was arrested and accused of stealing luggage in an airport, and there's all kinds of speculation. So it looks like that office is in somewhat of turmoil again, which is very disappointing, frankly. But nevertheless, that's my update from the committee. We had a really robust discussion about the language in the annual report. I think all of us agreed that we would like to continue meeting and continue looking at these issues. And I would love to hear from members of the public or fellow panelists right now if there are other issues that they think that you all think we should be investigating in the year ahead. We would like to hear from you about that. And I would also welcome any of the fellow committee members to pipe in here if they had any thoughts they would like to contribute moving forward.
Well, I'll just I'll add, since I have the privilege just to hop in and say, Lissa, thank you so much for another year of doing this substantive work and really holding these big discussions and enabling that. I know I sort of watch all that you're doing and the other committee members are doing, and so thank you first and foremost. And then Tony, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add regarding some of the turmoil with the Department of Energy's spent fuel office. Their overall director obviously has been suspended from his Department of Energy duties. Those duties have been turned over to an acting director, Dr. Kim Petrie, whom, if folks remember, actually addressed this panel back in February. So they're on the path of recovering and moving forward. Also, Dr. Erica Bickford remains involved. She's gotten some help. She's been holding down 2 and 3 positions in acting roles, and she's getting some assistance there. So that will continue to move forward.
You know, I just want to add that I think, you know, and Corey can maybe pipe in here too, that there are many groups, including many industry groups, including the Presidential Blue Ribbon Commission on Nuclear Waste Matters. I'm not sure I can't remember the full name of it. America's Nuclear Future, that had really proposed that the DOE dysfunction, which we've been experiencing for many years now on this issue, will persist because it's always sort of low on the list of priorities as far as DOE is concerned as an agency. And there's been a lot of endorsement of creating a freestanding agency that would deal with the question of nuclear waste nationally. That might be a position that NDCAP could consider endorsing. I do believe, again, there was an industry letter not long ago, Corey can confirm, that proposed just that. So that might be something that we should look at as a committee and bring back to the panel in the year ahead of us, because it has been and seems to be remaining, despite the good people there, some of the good people there, really just a problem having this issue housed within the Department of Energy. So, I mean, there could be a future discussion.
this would be a meaty one. I think there's lots and lots to say about that.
Didn't thank Congress for that one.
I couldn't hear you, Bob.
I said we could thank Congress for that one.
Yeah.
You have a lot to thank Congress for. Any other committee members like to share anything or any other questions for Lissa or anyone else? If not, we'll move along. Thank you so much, Lissa, again, for this and for all your good work on the committee. We'll move along, panel, to review of our annual report. I trust that you also had all received this in the couple of emails from Tony and posted on the website and had an opportunity to review it. And as Lissa just said, I know at least the policy committee had a long discussion about that. So yes, Chris.
I would move its acceptance.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, Emily, for disrupting that. There's a couple of things I should point out just where the where we're at with regards to where the draft stands right now, because there's a couple of items that a couple of sections just have placeholder information. So perhaps we should discuss that now before we talk about accepting the report.
There's a motion on the floor. Do we have to second it before we can discuss it? If we do, I'll second it.
So Chris, could you amend your motion so that it would be moved?
Yeah, I'll withdraw. Tony, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so where we are on the annual report, the latest draft that we have is one that I finished working on December 7th. This incorporated comments I received from several people, including Corey Daniels, Ann Darling, and I did receive some minor comments from the Public Service Department as well, namely my immediate director. So what we have to address yet, obviously, one of the things in there is there's placeholder information for the meeting summary for this evening's meeting. So obviously that can't be written up until this meeting has concluded. And so, that's one item. Several sections have items that, call for end of year data. For example, the end of year values for the Nuclear Decommissioning Trust and the Site Restoration Trust. So we have items like that to consider. There's probably going to be one or two more milestones of items that have completed at Vermont Yankee before this month is out. I noted that likely the demolition of the airlock. The structure is down, but there's still some cleanup to do on that. So that should complete by the end of this year. Also, as Corey mentioned in his presentation, the drain down of the spent fuel pool. If those items do complete, it's worth noting that in the annual report. The biggest item, though, and this is where I need input from the panel itself, is in section 12. We have a discussion that states what the panel priorities will be for 2023. Also, at least the panel's next several meeting dates. So that's really a section that I think needs to be decided upon this evening, if not tonight, then we need to schedule a meeting before January 15th, to get that ironed out. So I have some suggestions for some potential priorities, but that's really up to the panel to make those decisions. So I don't know what do people want to do from that point.
Steve, go ahead.
It's just coming in new to this. It sounds to me like there should be some delay in actually approving this report at this point, because end of the year information is not available. We've got to set dates for meetings, etc., before this document can be finalized. What is the date? I'm kind of lost track in terms of when is this report due to be submitted?
January 15th is the submittal deadline.
I see. Well,
yeah.
that puts it
in. And yes, Steve, since you haven't been involved with the panel for several years, what has been done in the past is that at the last meeting of the year, along with an approval, the approval is conditional in that I'm given some direction to say, okay, incorporate item X, Y, and Z and nothing else, and submit the report. So, that gives me the authorization to, collect the end of year data as it becomes available. Once it is all available, submit the report.
All right. Well, that clarifies, and certainly I'm sure that's been working. Sounds like.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to break from what we have been doing to approve, and then on the condition that, input information that's in the placeholder would be the summary from this meeting, the milestones at NorthStar. And then typically, I think at the end, once after elections, we'll kind of decide the 2023 meetings, and then you can put that in there.
Okay.
Can we just have a quick, clean list, Tony, of the placeholder text that you would like guidance from?
Yeah.
So it's this meeting summary.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. This meeting summary. Bear with me as I page up to that. So that's the tail end of section 3. At the tail end of section 4, any additional milestones that that's accomplished this month. Right now, the only item that I have there is assumed date of 12/20 for completing demolition of the reactor building airlock. And also in section 5, the end of year trust balances for the NDT and SRT. And then moving forward, section 8 and section 9 talk about the end of year values for waste shipments, water shipments, and waste is broken down to radioactive waste shipment totals, and then also volumes of non-radiological waste. And I in years past, NorthStar has provided where the non-rad waste is going. I would like to report that again this year, but if necessary, we can leave that as simply rad waste volumes. And then the only other item, like I mentioned, is section 12, which is summarizing panel priorities and meeting schedule for 2023. And that last item is really the one, the rest of these, if you guys give me the okay, I can figure it out. But section 12, I really need input from people. which is the, like I said, the priorities and schedule dates. So.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. Chris?
I guess I would suggest, Tony, everything but that last section is just basically
happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
I think we just got spammed, but I muted them.
Yeah.
Keep going, Chris. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. I think all the sections done, the first sections, with the exception of the last, I think is all just basic factual information. There's not any problem there. On the, I guess we could talk about schedule. We could also be frankly vague about it. We could say there will be 4 meetings as per statute on dates yet to be determined. And we could say that at our next meeting, there will be a determination as to what the priorities of the NDCAP will be. Because I don't know that we're going to be able to have that conversation right now. I'm turning into a pumpkin by 9 o'clock. That conversation could go a long time. So we could basically have a placeholder there saying, here's our new officers. Looking forward to an exciting 2023. And we'll be in touch about what those priorities are going to be and when our meeting is going to be held, but we will meet our statutory obligations.
Thank you, Chris. Laura?
Alternative. When is our next meeting?
We don't have a next meeting scheduled.
Okay, so that would be problematic. So that's probably the optimal alternative. If we had a next meeting scheduled, we could write a letter and say that we will be submitting it at XYZ time, which would probably be fine.
Steve?
Yes, in years past, this gets back to the data that Tony has to present in the report. In years past, Tony, has this information been available by January 15th? It seems to me like quite a bit of information pulling together in a fairly short time frame, 15 days.
Yes. It's just a matter. I touch base with Corey. And it's really the person doing most of the work on this would be Mike Pletcher. It comes from what is, I always forget Mike's position, rad wasting chemistry supervisor.
That's about right, yeah.
Radiation protection manager.
Radiation protection manager, yes, okay.
All right, well, that was just a question of technicality thing, but well, if you can make it wonderful. I mean, I don't have a problem with keeping meetings, specific dates to be determined. I don't have a problem with that as long as we commit to having 4 of them. That would be my position.
Yeah, I would note that one of the changes in the legislation last year was the requirement is 3 meetings per year now.
Oh, I see.
It's dropped down by 1.
I see.
In the past, we haven't had too much. I mean, again, it's been typical practice that we schedule the next year's meetings after the elections. So if that's the case, I would say you can include the meeting schedule in there. I don't know that the annual report will suffer if the priorities for 2023 aren't included. I think that I think that would be adequate. Chris?
And just for historic, again, just kind of me having the 8-year, 3-month, something long view. When NDCAP was first created, remember there was no sense that the plant would be decommissioned yet. And so now, with the license docket, there was a whole other schedule established for status updates and financial updates and everything else, which is, now I'm trying to remember, is at the end of March, I think it is, that's due to the state. So anyway, at some point it might make sense to, if for some reason statute has to get opened again, to kind of evolve our reporting with the actual formal reporting per the board order, per the PUC order. But anyway, that's part of the it's not a problem. It's just things aren't as in alignment as they ideally could be. I know why they want the report by January is in case there's some issue that the legislature wants to take up. But now it's that, what we always wait for is that report in March, at the end of March, with all that detailed information.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner June?
So I've been listening to the discussion, and I think I've heard some good suggestions about ways that we could meet the obligation and perhaps not get too caught up in details. We don't generally have trouble settling on dates that we're aiming for our meetings, so getting a schedule down shouldn't be a hard thing. As for the priorities, I think it would be reasonable for the report to simply flag that the panel expects to continue with the work it's been doing on the priorities it's had. And if there's any change, they will update the legislature as needed, and just leave it at that. Because it's not that we have a list of new thoughts, new ideas every year. It's that the work that's being done is not yet done, and I just don't think that the statute is that prescriptive for what needs to be done in filing a good report.
I appreciate that suggestion of language. So, panel, I'm hearing that there's a consensus building around approving the annual report as is, allowing Tony to include the factual information that will come within the next few weeks for sections 3, 4, 5, 8, and 9, and then for section 12 to include our meeting schedule for 2023 that we will hopefully establish this evening, and then include some language that says that we'll continue what June had just said. The panel expects to continue with priorities as had in the past, and if that were to change, then we can notify the legislature as needed. Does that sound like a decent summary? Lisa, you have something to add?
Yeah, I concur fully with June. And, we spent 10 minutes kind of talking about this. We could have set our meeting schedule, and if we need to change it in the year ahead, we can. If our first meeting should be after that comprehensive report at the end of March, let's set the first date for the beginning of April. And just throw 3 dates out there for next year. And if we have to change them, we will as we go along, but at least we'll have set them tonight. That's what I would submit. Thank you.
What you said, Emily, motion?
I would entertain a motion. Certainly, Bob. Thank you.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you, Corey. Do we need to do a roll call for that? Panelists, would you like to hear that
I don't
again?
believe so.
Comfortable with it? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstentions?
An aye.
You're an aye, Laura?
Yes, apologies.
Okay, that's okay. I'm an aye too. I actually did say it for the record. Okay. Thank you, panel. Tony, do you have sufficient guidance? Do you need anything to be repeated?
Yes, I do. I'm good.
Great. Thank you. Then I would say let's not forget about our 2023 meeting dates. We could do that now. I'm also tempted to say we can move on to election of officers and include the meeting dates in our meeting wrap up. No real logic to that. It's just been tradition. Why break form now? So at this point, I believe I turn the meeting over to Commissioner Tierney, if you will.
A moment ago, I was Commissioner June. I like that.
I feel like this is slightly more formal now.
Okay, if you want to be formal. Okay. Well, all right. Let me formally thank you, Emily, for your excellent work in your tenure as our chair. You've presided over a particularly difficult time given the logistics of the pandemic, and it seems to me that your tenure has also coincided with quite the uptick in public interest in the work that the panel's doing, and you've been level-headed and gracious the entire time. And I think tonight's meeting perfectly demonstrates why you should run for another term, because really this has been seamless. So with that said, dear panel members, we face the prospect of electing a new chair and vice chair this evening. Tony, I'm going to need your help because we're going to have to do some voting, and I'm looking to you to make sure that we get every vote and record them as needed. Do we first have any self-declared candidates for the office of chair? I see a hand up already from Representative Sibilia, who's shaking her head, so she doesn't want to be drafted, I think. I might add too that should we not succeed in nominating a chair tonight, the statute provides that I will serve until such time as we do have one. And it is my strongly held view that this panel ought not to be chaired by the Public Service Department Commissioner. This is a panel of citizens for citizens, and it should govern itself accordingly. So with that said, Laura, what did you have on your mind?
I was ready to make a nomination, Commissioner, but I noted that you were asking for self-nominations. What is your pleasure?
Yes, so let me just give an opportunity here for anybody who wishes to be bold as to nominate themselves. And let me just remove any stigma from such a thing. It's okay to nominate yourself. We love that here, and I don't see any takers so far, but let me just throw it open for a moment. Self-nominees for chair. I don't have that music from the quiz game show otherwise, so Jeopardy, I think it is. Thank you. It's enough time to sing Jingle Bells too. Okay, I'm not perceiving any self-nominations, and so why don't you tell us who you have in mind, Laura?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Emily Davis for chair.
Yes. Do we have a second for this nomination? Anybody?
I second the nomination.
Okay. Emily, what is your feeling having heard how popular you are? Are you running or no?
I panel and commissioner, I am not running.
Okay.
It's been very fun, and it's very nice to work with you all, but I need to step back from my commitments.
All right. So thank you for that. Having heard that Emily declines to be nominated, do we have other nominations this evening?
Could I ask Steve Skipnowski if he would serve if I nominated him?
Yes, I would, Bob.
Excellent.
I'd like to nominate Steve Skipnowski.
Second.
Okay. We have a candidate for chair, and it seems to me that, Steve, it might be good for you to just spend a moment talking about, well, I guess you did already tell us a little bit about your background, that this is not your first rodeo with the NDCAP, isn't that right?
Well, that is accurate. I joined NDCAP in the early days, and I've been involved both with NDCAP as well as the Vernon Planning Commission. I was chair of the Vernon Planning Commission for several years, and tried to be active in town government in Vernon. I was also select person in Vernon from 2016 to 2018.
All right.
And
sounds
so
like, yeah, you have quite the background in public service.
As far as my plant background, I started working at Vermont Yankee in 1972 and retired from Vermont Yankee in 2000. well, 15, and then I worked for NorthStar for a while until 2019. So I have some experience with the plant as well.
I see. All right. So we have one candidate nominated. Do we have any other nominees for the position of chair of the NDCAP? So again, jingle bells or Jeopardy music playing. Okay, Tony, let us see if we can get through this vote efficiently. Will you please call the roll, and will the individual whose name's been called please vote accordingly?
Okay, my list is in alphabetical order by last name, just so folks know how this will work. So first on the list, Todd Amato, if you are still here. Going once, going twice. Okay, next one, Chris Campany.
Aye.
Okay, next one here is Corey Daniels. I'm sorry, is that an I?
Yes,
okay, I'm sorry, it garbled on my end. My apologies. Next person is Emily Davis.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Bill Irwin.
Aye.
Okay, next person is Bob Leach.
Aye.
Okay, we do not have Brett Long. We do not have Senator McDonald. David Pearson.
Aye, Tony.
Okay. Marvin Resnikoff. Okay. And Representative Sibilia.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Tierney.
Aye, and with gratitude.
Okay. And I'm sorry we have one name out of order, but Steve, we will get to you. But Lissa Weinman.
Aye.
And Steve Skibnowski, I don't know if you want to vote or.
Aye.
Okay.
Well, Tony, by my count, we have 1, 2, 3. We have unanimous among those present and voting.
Yes.
And so, Steve, congratulations on that vote of confidence, and thank you again so much for your public spiritedness in stepping up. And again, you're taking over from a wonderful predecessor who just has really done such a nice job setting a civil tone for us here at the NDCAP. Much appreciated. We will now entertain nominations, self-nominations for vice chair. To explain, Josh Unruh, my memory was our vice chair to our chair, Emily Davis, and Josh has stepped away from the NDCAP, resigning. So we need to fill that vacancy as well. Do we have any self-nominations for that? And yes, Representative Sibilia, I'm surprised you're running. Is that right? No, Laura, you're shaking your head again. So your hand was up, or was that just a boo-boo? That was a boo-boo. Okay. Nope.
Ready to nominate when you're ready, Commissioner.
Okay. Okay. Why don't we then? I'm not hearing any self-nominations for vice chair. This is going to be challenging. Go ahead, Laura. What's your nomination?
I'll nominate Lissa Weinman as vice chair.
Okay, we have a nominee. Lissa, if you were to be voted in, would you accept the nomination? You're shaking your head? No, is that right? Is that a no? Or you're muted, so I get to interpret, and I'm going to interpret that as a yes.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I would. I was going to say the vice chair just kind of steps in if Steve can't. So that would be fine. I'm hoping if I do accept that, Steve tries to make every meeting.
Of course. Well, my memory is too that you have served previously as vice chair and done a very nice job. So you're familiar with what it entails.
I am. Thank you.
Okay. All right. In that case, let us proceed. Are there any other nominations for vice chair?
Commissioner, did we get a second on Lissa?
No, we did not, but I'll certainly be happy to second that.
Okay.
Okay, so we're good. No further nominations. Nomination window for vice chair is closing. Okay, Tony, let's go to a vote then. Again, roll call.
Okay. Pardon me while I make a note here. Okay, so Todd was not here. Chris Campany.
Aye.
Corey Daniels.
Aye.
Emily Davis.
Aye.
Bill Irwin.
Aye.
Bob Leach.
Aye.
Okay, and no Brett Long, no Mark McDonald. David Pearson.
Aye, Tony.
Thank you. Marvin Resnikoff.
Aye.
Laura Sibilia.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Tierney.
Aye, and also with gratitude.
Okay. And Steve Skibnowski.
Aye.
And lastly, Lissa, if up to you.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why not?
Well, again, Tony, I think I see among those present a unanimous vote. So
That's what I'm
Lissa,
seeing.
congratulations on your election as well. And many thanks to both of you for stepping up to these offices. From this point forward, Steve, the meeting is yours.
Oh, wow. I thought it was it's 2023 already, isn't it? Very good. I guess the one thing I want to mention, just in closing from this last article, I hope we'll be able to work closely with the people who've been on this committee for the interim that I was not, to be able to gain from them important information that I'm going to need. And that's true for Emily and for anyone else who has things they want to share with me. Because I want to hit the ground running. I want to be as useful as possible and make this committee, this panel, functional and useful. So that would be what I would like to focus on. But moving ahead now, we've elected officers, and our next, is it possible to insert, I noticed a note from Chris Campany on some meeting dates. So is it possible to insert that here? Or should we go into something else, I guess? Actually, yeah, I guess we're going into general public comments to the panel. We can do that last date. We can do the dates for 2023 in our meeting wrap up, perhaps. Is anyone objecting to that? Does anyone object to that? Okay, well, I'd like to open the floor for general public comments to the panel. Are there any public comments that the panel should hear as a group? Not hearing any, I guess we can move on to meeting wrap up and adjournment. And part of that, I would like to comment on comment on Chris's suggestions for the upcoming meetings for 2023. And if I can pull them up here on my screen, I just want to review them again. Are there any objections to any of the dates that Chris put out, which would be May 8th, which is a Monday, Monday, September 11th, and Monday, December 11th. That would be 3 meetings as required by the revised state statute. Are there any objections to that or other suggestions as an alternative to those dates?
Make a motion to propose the 3 dates as listed, May 8th, September 11th, and December 11th, 2023 for next year's meeting schedule.
Thank you, Corey. And is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion made and seconded for the meetings scheduled for the 2023. And is there any discussion on that? Not hearing any discussion.
Mr. Chair, I
yes,
see Emily Davis has her hand up, sir.
I had my little yellow hand up.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Quite all right. I just want to underscore Chris's comment that this was essentially the same schedule that we had for 2022. But we had 4 meetings in 2022. The February one was to discuss the comments and the NDCAP comments to the Department of Energy's to their rulemaking period. So just adding that, this schedule looks good. I would support it.
Thank you, Emily. Are there any other comments or recommendations on the motion that's on the floor?
I just want to say we did schedule our federal nuclear waste policy committee meeting for that same September 11. I think it's fine to do 2 meetings in one day, but I don't know for members of the public if there's any flexibility there. I might suggest that we do the regular NDCAP meeting a week later in September on the 18th.
Are you making an amendment to the motion?
Yes, I guess. I mean, I just, September 18th instead of September 11th, if there's no objection to that, would be preferable for those of us who would be involved in then 2 meetings that day. It's just a lot for one day. We could also change our meeting time if necessary for the committee meeting. But we had already said it out publicly.
Is there a second to the amendment motion?
A second.
Okay, the amendment motion has been made and seconded for moving the proposed September 11th date to September 18th. All those in favor of that update to the original motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. And are there any abstentions? Not hearing any. The amendment to the motion has been made, seconded, and I believe received universal approval. And so now we move on to the main motion. There's further discussion on the main motion for those dates. Okay, not hearing any, I would propose that we move forward the vote on those dates. So we have now Monday, May 8th, Monday, September 18th, and Monday, December 11th as the dates for a meeting of the NDCAP in 2023. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those Okay, those opposed, nay. And are there any abstentions? I declare that the motion has passed, and the dates of Monday, May 8th, Monday, September 18th, and Monday, December 11th of 2023 will be the dates that we will be meeting as NDCAP in 2023. Okay, now moving up to wrap up. Are there any other comments from the panel on anything that we should be talking about at this time?
Just thanking Emily for doing a great job.
Yes, I would like to certainly extend my thanks to her too, and I hope that she will provide me with some guidance in going into the future. Thank you.
I was going to step in and thank you all, and I appreciate the nomination. And it's been really lovely to be chair of the panel. But mostly, I wanted to thank you, Steve, for not only is this your first panel meeting in at least a little while, but you stepped right into the role of chair and then resumed running the meeting. So thank you so much, also for your service. And when I became chair, Josh was very gracious with his time in getting me onboarded. So we have a great tradition, and Chris too has provided me with a lot of support when he was chair. So we have a great tradition of working together, and we'll be in touch very shortly, I'm sure.
Thank you. Thank you again.
And Emily, good luck with wherever the road takes you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, from all of us. So at this point in time, unless there's any further wrap up, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
And so not hearing, or is there any discussion on the motion? And not hearing any, I would like to propose that we, by voice vote, move to adjourn. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. No, and any abstentions? Not hearing any abstentions or nays, I would say that the motion passed and we're adjourning. And I hope that you all have a wonderful holidays. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you and each of you in the upcoming year. It should be quite exciting for me. And it may be a learning experience for you all and me. So thank you again for your confidence.
Congratulations, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Happy 2023, everyone.